The vast majority of us have never been to a dairy farm, but I'm willing to argue that if we saw firsthand hordes that go on, we would stop eating dairy immediately. Eliminating dairy would not only be good for the cows, but would have a positive effect on our health and the environment as well. Consumption of dairy leads to major health problems, gives way to environmental issues, and promotes an industry that treats animals unethically. After many hours of reading peer-reviewed science and exploring government department websites, I have the research to support my argument. Today, I am first going to talk about problematic effects of dairy on our health, the environment, and the unethical treatment of cows. Next, I will explore the causes, and finally, I will give you some solutions to these problems. First, I would like to talk about health problems that come from eating dairy and problems of the dairy industry altogether. Over the past couple of decades, dairy consumption has risen dramatically. Cheese and other dairy products are linked to a variety of health issues. Dairy intake is rising almost identically along with the trend of obesity. According to Statista, Americans on average are consuming 646 pounds of dairy per year, and the growing rate of dairy consumption and obesity are almost identical. Other health problems have been linked to dairy consumption of cardiovascular disease. As some of you may know, cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of premature death in the United States. The third major health problem linked to dairy consumption is cancer. In a study released by the Physicians Committee, men who consume more than 2.5 servings of dairy per day are at an increased risk of pancreatic cancer. Not only is dairy bad for our health, but it's bad for the environment as well. There are approximately 9 million dairy cows in America. These cows require a lot of food and water, and they also produce a lot of waste. Each dairy cow alone consumes anywhere from 30 to 50 gallons of water per day. Along with consuming massive amounts of water, dairy cows produce tons of waste that contaminate soil and nearby water. Dairy cows are also a significant factor in greenhouse gas emissions. According to a study by the Journal of Dairy Science, dairy cows are responsible for 1.3% greenhouse gas emissions. I know this doesn't sound like a lot, but it is high enough to be considered an important source. Another problem caused by the dairy industry is the question of ethics. Once a dairy cow reaches maturity, she is artificially inseminated. After giving birth, their calves are immediately taken. The breaking of this maternal bond is very stressful for the mother cow. Within 2 to 4 months, the mother cow is again impregnated, and this cycle continues until she is no longer in her prime. At this point, they are slaughtered. Typically, a cow's natural life expectancy is 15 to 20 years, but on the dairy farm is reduced to 4 to 6 years. The evidence of unethical treatment came from the Humane Society report. Now that I've explained some major problems of the dairy and dairy industry in general, I would like to explore the causes. Valued at $40 billion, the dairy industry has a major incentive to produce a product that is not good for humans. Many dairy products are extremely high in saturated fats. Cheese, which is 70% saturated fat, is a leading contributor to obesity. During his seminar, Dr. Neil Bernard shows the correlation between consumption and obesity. Saturated fats have the ability to enter the cell, causing disruption to the metabolic process. Unlike carbs and proteins, saturated fats do not need to be converted and can easily add to your current fat stores. Saturated fats do much more than just cause obesity, however. In a 2019 study by Advances in Nutrition, dairy was shown as a major contributor of saturated fats in our diet. Saturated fats cause plaque buildups in our arteries, and once those break free, they lead to heart attack or stroke. In a 2019 study published by Harvard Health, researchers found that reduction or changing of dairy fats to unsaturated fats can reduce the risk of heart attack or stroke by up to 25%. Since heart disease is a leading cause of death in the United States, 25% decrease is substantial. Another major disease caused by dairy consumption is cancer. In order to produce milk, the dairy cows must be pregnant. This means they have a lot of hormones circulating through their body. One hormone, IGF-1, has been shown to increase risk of prostate cancer in men and ovarian and breast cancer in women. Next, the dairy industry causes a major impact to the environment. A massive amount of water is required to raise dairy cows. This takes away from water that can be used during droughts. As referenced in the article above, methane gas is produced by dairy cows, a major source of greenhouse gas emissions. These emissions come from the cow itself, from feeding, from housing, from the soil, and from storing of the manure. Finally, ethical treatment on dairy farms are concerned. The root of this being profit. As a method of streamlining business, cows are no longer seen as sentient creatures with feelings and emotions. This allows for dairy farmers to treat them very unethically in order to make a profit. Now that I have explored some of the problems, told you about some of the causes, the solution is easy to see. Stop eating dairy. On a local level, you can switch to alternative forms of dairy. By switching to alternative dairy products, the dairy industry will be impacted and forced to reconsider their business. In today's world, all dairy products can basically be made from alternative plant-based ingredients, leaving no reason to consume dairy products. On a government level, we can change some of the USDA weight guidelines. The government currently recommends 2 to 3 cups of dairy per day, which leads Americans to think that dairy is a healthy option. By changing these guidelines, Americans will be less likely to consume dairy products. Today, I have discussed the problems with consuming dairy, the causes of the problems, and some possible solutions. In conclusion, I encourage you to consider the points I have made and eliminate dairy from your diet. Not just for you, but for 9 million cows in just the US alone. You may not be currently experiencing health problems, but studies show that over time, consuming dairy has an adverse effect on your health. My hopes for today is that you take some of the things that you've learned and start making small changes that will have a huge impact over time.